Good morning, my creative collective. What's going on? This is A Course in Creativity, lesson number 5. So we're diving right in. This is playing the game of life with your inner pieces as opposed to your inner pieces. I thought of pieces as a take on thoughts and ego and how we can use these things to sort of know ourselves as something other than divine, right? So I'll dive into the Course in Miracles lesson, which is, I am never upset for the reason I think. So I am never upset for the reason I think. Now, what I love about this, at first I had to sit with it. So I do encourage you to do this as well. Again, just take a moment or two to do this exercise today. You don't have to dive in and do the whole thing right away. We're not fixing Rome today, as it were. I think as the phrase goes, fixing Rome. I'm not sure, building Rome, one or the other. So we're not talking about having feelings here, because feelings are important to recognize and integrate because they are the product of thoughts, right? So what this is really doing, I'm never upset for the reason I think, is about understanding that what you're upset with is perception usually. And perception is informed by the senses, but it's also informed by the thoughts that you think, which are most of the time, changing, and they're shifting and moving. And in that way, it's sort of, it looks at how the shadow can kind of creep in as well. So this is, I love this work, A Course in Miracles, and adapted to A Course in Creativity. It is not necessarily shadow work in a pure sense, if it can even have a pure sense, but it is definitely a form of it where we go within and we start to ask these questions of ourselves that are kind of uncomfortable, right? Like, it's not, I am never upset for the reason I think. Well, some people might say, well, how does that apply specifically to something related to, for example, as a trans person, if someone, decides that they're going to be transphobic towards me, I can be upset about that. The trick here, is to pull back. And I say it with a smile because I've had to do this for many years, even before coming out as trans and having an identity as a queer person. I had to really sit with this and understand the point isn't to create a hierarchy, because hierarchy is ego. Hierarchy is what pulls you into third density. Hierarchy is what disconnects you from spirit, right? That's this idea that, well, some things are more important to be upset about than others. We're talking about what's going on in here, right? We're not trying to go out into the world and fix things this morning in this moment. What we're doing is looking at the processes happening within you that liberate you. And when it comes to your creative power as well, this similar process, this creating a hierarchy of thoughts that we think, and creating a hierarchy of, this is more important to be upset about than this. All of it disconnects you. All of it disconnects you. And I think that's what's really important here, is understanding that these hierarchies justify the presence and operation of the ego. These hierarchies justify the things that we get upset about. But the things that we get upset about, if our thoughts aren't meaning anything, okay, so if our thoughts aren't meaning anything fundamentally, because they don't, we know this, right? Cognitive distortions, cognitive dissonance, all of it. If our thoughts are this fallible, then what of the hierarchy that we've created are thoughts, and how can we discern truth from the thoughts that we think? So if we pull this back for a minute and we just sit and observe today, right? If we just sit and observe, the beginning point is understanding that any thought, there is an even playing field here where we like to create hierarchies. That's what the ego does, right? The ego strives to know itself only in the shadows, if ever. It does not want you to know that it's there, because that's where we get into things like justifying, judgment. We get into guilt and shame, hatred, self-hatred. A lot of these activities of the mind, because it is activities of the mind, work to keep the ego hidden so that we never really get the idea that we're all connected. Because if we understood that we were all connected, if we understood that we were all one, right? Law of one is what's behind A Course in Miracles and many other spiritual teachings. I mean, shit, even Jesus talked about this, not just in A Course in Miracles, but like right in the Bible. So like, no matter where you begin from, you get this idea of this coming together and oneness, right? And that's where we get into this ego space where we start to create hierarchies of, well, this thought is more important to be upset. I don't know why my eye is so itchy. This thought is more important to be upset about. Sorry, now I'm done playing with my eye. You know, I've talked about this person. I need them to, I've told them to do the dishes this many times and they haven't listened. We make meaning of that thought, and we create a feeling in ourselves based on that thought process. And it usually isn't right? Again, we're facing the fallibility of the mind here. So, you know, breathe into the discomfort that may arise, right? I am never upset for the reason that I think. Breathe into the discomfort of that, because we're not talking here about identifying and labeling. We're just talking about observing. And I think what's really important for us to do today is to understand that if it upsets you, and of course even says this, if it upsets you, if anything upsets you, it is fundamentally not worth the price. It's not worth the price. And all of it, regardless of the hierarchies that we build, all of it is just thoughts that we keep thinking that mean nothing, right? So this quote here, it is, you know, lesson 5, verse 6, or I should say chapter 6. Anyways, I cannot keep this form of upset and let the others go. For the purposes of these exercises, then, I will regard them as the same. So it's really about applying things equally. And then here it also says lesson 5, 4, and it goes 3 to 4. So there are no small upsets. They are equally disturbing to my peace of mind. Yes, we're getting to a point here where we're understanding that as much as we think that other people can be sources of our upset, we're beginning to understand through these lessons that we are more profound a source of our own upset, because we buy into the idea that there's a hierarchy of what's most important in what to be upset about. So I am never upset for the reason I think. It's a challenging one today, my friends. This is lesson number 5, but remember, if something disturbs your peace, that is the metric to use to correct your thoughts, because your thoughts don't just form beliefs. Your thoughts also affect your emotions, and your emotions affect your biochemistry. So you can have an explosive reaction to something, and it actually means nothing because you've made something of it. You've made something of it with your thoughts that it actually isn't. And then you realize after the fact, and then you course correct. But what it does is it reveals a fallibility of the mind. So what we're doing is peeling back things, right? Peeling back things and taking taking the view of them in terms of the right. There's no real right or wrong. That's a polarity that's more of the product of third density thinking. But what we're talking about here is seeing things through the eyes of love, through the eyes of spirit, through the eyes of the way that the divine sees you. So to me, I don't know what is more high a price to pay than your inner peace. Because if your inner peace is where you see God in others, if your inner peace is where you see love and spirit in others, that's everything. Why keep that from yourself, right? So playing the game of life with your inner pieces, as opposed to inner pieces of thought, right? Instead of trying to strategize and think about which one's more important, I think the lesson today is taking a step back and just saying, no, none of it has a categorization aside from it. Does this take away my peace? Does this take away my access to the perspective that allows me to see spirit in you? Does this take away from my access point, my gateway, my portal to seeing love in you inherently? And that inner peace that comes from that is really one of the starting points of understanding where meaning is made, right? Meaning is an inside job. Meaning is an inside job. And when we are upset, when we're disturbed, and I should say disturbed, because upset sounds like mad. And when I talk about explosive reactions, what I was thinking about is a toddler throwing a tantrum. So it's just like these responses that we have internally, right? Like, I mean, I hope that you're not throwing tantrums like toddlers. Whenever I see it at the grocery store, there's a part of me that's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm like, can I buy the parent a chocolate bar? Like, instead of getting one for the kid. But, it's like, what we're upset about is more the perception of events than the actual events is what I'm getting to here. So that is lesson number 5. We're diving deeper and deeper. These lessons are iterative. So I'm very excited to see how this continues to unfold for you. If this video resonated, do like and subscribe. It helps me to grow the channel and to know that this resonated for you. So we're starting to dive pretty deep here. So lesson 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think. It really is learning to play the game of life with your inner peace, isn't it? On that note, my friends, have a fantastic Friday, and I will see you on the next one.